In a distant future, at a time when space travel is routine, Adam and Jake are on their way to the planet Antaris. About 900 years ago, humans established a colony there, but since then, there has been no further communication. Now the two represent humanity's last hope. The only thing they receive from the planet is static noise through their communication systems. Determined, they decide to land and explore the mysterious silence. As they approach Antares, the ship begins to vibrate intensely, shaken by the planet's unusual gravity. The intense radiation disables all navigation systems, forcing them to take manual control. Descending rapidly, they activate the thrusters to stabilize their low-altitude flight over the alien terrain. Everything seems to be going well for several miles until they collide with rock formations and, while attempting an emergency landing, suffer a terrible crash. Despite the devastating impact, Adam and Jake survive. Jake, however, is gravely injured with a wounded shoulder. The ship is beyond repair, eliminating any chance of return. Adam helps Jake out of the wreckage, and they soon realize they are surrounded by a vast desert, under the gaze of two moons in the sky. In the emergency kit, Adam finds the necessary tools to administer a painkiller and remove a metal fragment from Jake's shoulder. While treating the wounds, Jake mentions seeing a dog nearby, something Adam attributes to delusions caused by the medication. But then, barking breaks the silence. Curious, Adam follows the sound and encounters Will, a disheveled boy with a dog and a knife in hand. Will seems desperate, talking about being chased by the snakeheads. Trying to help, Adam approaches, but Will runs away in panic. Chased by the warriors Will called the snakeheads, the young boy is soon surrounded and quickly disarmed. The warriors overpower him and drag him away. Adam, who had been following the boy's trail, arrives just in time to see only the knife left on the ground. Suddenly, an earthquake shakes the ground beneath his feet, but fortunately, it is brief. Worried, Adam uses a pulse device to check on Jake's condition and decides to continue his search for answers. He spots a distant temple and decides to investigate. Inside, he finds a circle of women chanting rituals for Sumuru. At the peak of the ritual, Queen Sumuru majestically appears. The high priestess Taxon announces the beginning of a ceremony dedicated to the great serpent goddess. Suddenly, from the depths of a pit, a colossal snake emerges. The women in reverence present Will, now apprehensive, as a sacrificial offering to the serpentine monster. Dove, a fearless guard, lets out a cry as she recognizes her brother Will among the warriors surrounding him. In a fit of rage, she charges, attacking the soldiers with impressive skill. With her spear, she quickly disarms and takes them down one by one until she kicks the last opponent towards the pit, where the giant snake awaits its meal. The serpent swallows the soldier and retreats to the depths from which it came. At this moment, Taxon, enraged, calls for more warriors to surround the brothers, accusing them of violating the sanctity of the ritual. Sumuru intervenes, reciting an ancient law that protects women and pardons men in specific circumstances. Dove acted in self-defense, thus retaining the queen's protection, and Will is also pardoned. Taxon, dissatisfied, begins to protest but is interrupted by a signal on Adam's bracelet, coming from Jake, marking his position. When Taxon orders her warriors to capture Adam, he fires at the cave ceiling, creating a cloud of dust and debris to distract them as he escapes. Amid the confusion, Dove yells for Will to run, while the warriors pursue Adam. After a hard chase, Adam and Will manage to return to the crash site, but before they can reunite with Jake, they are intercepted by soldiers who start a gunfight. Adam covers Will's retreat, allowing him to run towards Jake, and manages to drive the warriors back with a controlled explosion. Meanwhile, Jake shelters Will in the damaged ship. However, a poisoned arrow strikes Adam, who, wounded, crawls inside the ship. Will, frightened, warns him about the poison on the arrow. The warriors, still determined, surround the ship, preparing to invade. It is then that Sumuru, along with her guards, arrives and orders the attack to cease, reminding them that, as queen, her orders override Taxon's. With a gesture of her hand, she disperses the warriors. Sumuru then carefully removes the arrow from Adam's leg and applies an antidote, causing him to pass out. Shortly after, she commands Dove and her guards to imprison the men. Recovered from the poison, Adam wakes up in Sumuru's residence, comfortable and healed. Jake is brought by the guards, visibly better after receiving treatment for his injury. Together, they comment on the female dominance on the planet and conclude that all must be descendants of the original colonists due to their fluent use of English. While Will stealthily explores the area, Jake reveals to Adam the results of his scans. Antaris is experiencing dramatic tectonic shifts, with active underground volcanoes, moving magma flows, and unstable magnetic fields, which would explain the ship's system failures. Antaris faces catastrophic instability. Adam and Jake conclude that the planet may not last more than 2 or 3 months before a cataclysmic explosion. The moment is interrupted by Dove, who rushes in, informing that Queen Sumuru wishes to speak with Adam. He is promptly escorted to the Queen's chamber, where he is forced to witness Sumuru bathing. After her bath, Sumuru, with a theatrical gesture, tests Adam's weapon on the ceiling, creating a controlled explosion to assess its power. With the guards already outside the room, she takes advantage of the privacy to discuss more delicate matters. Sumuru narrates the story of Antaris, which began 900 years ago, aligning with Adam's notes on the colony. She reveals that after years of communication, wars on Earth silenced any message exchanges, and Antaris was forgotten. Explaining the current situation, Sumuru describes how the intensive exploitation of oil and gas may have destabilized the planet, while Taxon, defying science, insists these are signs of divine discontent. Taxon, who was groomed to be queen since childhood, still resents her defeat in the election to Sumuru. With the urgency of planetary evacuation at hand, Adam encounters the queen's reluctance, who mentions the ship's destruction and hints that men bring bad luck, referring to an ancient curse. Curious about the fate of the planet's men, Adam is taken to the mines, where he discovers that all men are kept as slaves. Sumuru explains that over the centuries, men's strong physiques have been used for manual labor, while the women, who govern, dedicate themselves to intellectual and administrative roles. Adam, unable to contain his outrage, confronts Sumuru about this unequal division, but she, calmly, justifies that it was a necessary measure to prevent the violent mistakes of the past when men ruled with brute force. Sumuru then explains that, despite traditions, women continue to interact with men solely for procreation. She illustrates this point with a bold gesture by kissing Adam, an act observed from a distance by a suspicious Taxon. However, Adam confronts Sumuru, arguing that such a system does not represent peace, but is a form of slavery. The discussion heats up, and Sumuru, driven by emotion, punches Adam. He manages to dodge some blows and, with quick reflexes, firmly holds Sumuru. At that moment, Dove intervenes from behind, attacking Adam to protect her queen. The order is given to imprison both Adam and Jake. During the confusion in the dark tunnels, Will, sensing the imminent danger, tries to warn the group, but it's useless. A rain of arrows strikes Dove and the other guards, who fall mortally wounded. While Adam is captured, Will rushes to his dying sister, who with her last words entrusts him to report the events to Sumuru. Adam is then dragged to Taxon's private chamber, where she tries to seduce him to her cause against Sumuru. She explains how the arrival of the settlers enraged a local deity, which responded with a deadly storm, striking down most of the men, a tragedy that Taxon attributes to Sumuru's scientific practices, which defied traditional beliefs. As she attempts to get closer, Taxon shows Adam a snake, calling it a sacred child. Adam, overcome with disgust and fear, crushes the snake. Enraged, Taxon threatens to kill him, but instead, she tries to kiss him, distracted by her conflicting emotions. Adam takes advantage of this distraction to attempt connecting his bracelet to the ancient tech screen on the wall, seeking more information. Taxon, mistaking the technology for magic, demands the device. When he refuses, Adam faces Taxon's wrath as she grabs a knife and tries to attack him. However, he manages to block and disarm her. At that moment, the guards enter, but as they remove their helmets, they reveal themselves to be Sumuru and Jake in disguise. Sumuru accuses Taxon of breaking the laws by killing other women, and with a swift blow, she knocks her out. Reuniting with Will and the loyal guards, Sumuru declares that they need to head to the Scorched Zone, a place feared by everyone. Jake shares his findings with Adam. He believes that the disaster that wiped out the male settlers was caused by instability in the power reactor at the command center, suggesting that technology may be the true villain in Antaris' story. Navigating through the underground tunnels, Sumuru reveals that the local population fled the Scorched Zone centuries ago, and a precious artifact from that time has been passed down from queen to queen. She shows the men a photo preserved in the artifact, depicting the ship of the first settlers, still intact in the devastated area. The queen explains that she plans to guide them there so they can use the ship to leave Antaris, avoiding further complications. As they cautiously move forward, they realize that warriors loyal to Taxon are closing in. The group needs to hide quickly. It's clear that Taxon must have activated a general alarm, and likely all exits are being watched. Luckily, Will, who knows the tunnels well, finds a secret passage, though it's too narrow for the adults. As they pass by another cave, Sumuru warns that they shouldn't enter, but Will reveals that the place is used as a prison. Curious and concerned, Adam and Jake head to the cave and discover several men confined in a cage on the ground. An intense discussion about human rights erupts, with Sumuru initially refusing to release the prisoners. Will and Jake, however, start to force open the cage. Sumuru, in a tense moment, threatens them with a crossbow, but before the situation escalates, Taxon soldiers find the group. A shootout begins, and Sumuru reluctantly starts fighting the approaching enemies. Jake takes advantage of the chaos to open the cage and free the men. As more warriors arrive, Adam convinces Sumuru to return his weapon, and he fires into the tunnel, causing an explosion that blocks the attackers and provides a moment of respite. He then encourages the men to leave the cage, and after some initial hesitation, Sumuru also urges them to escape. Freed, the group rushes to the nearest exit and reaches the surface. Hearing the sound of more warriors approaching, they run towards the burned zone. During the escape, Adam questions Sumuru about her sudden change of heart regarding the men. She shares that, as a queen, she witnesses every birth on the planet and carries the guilt for the condition imposed on male babies, who experience only a brief moment of freedom before being relegated to marginalization. Jake, skeptical of Sumuru's motivations, listens as Adam tells the story of his own parents, who were captured when he was a child, leading him to be sent to a labor camp. Meanwhile, Taxon's warriors catch up to the fleeing prisoners, but are ordered by Taxon to ignore them, and continue pursuing Sumuru's group. The soldiers hesitate before entering the dangerous burned zone, but loyalty compels them to follow. A few hours after a tense escape, the group is surprised by a new earthquake that causes them to tumble down a hill as they were climbing. The earthquake, though intense, is brief, allowing the team to quickly recover and continue their journey. Along the way, they encounter the skeleton of one of the original settlers. Jake uses his scanner to analyze the remains, confirming that the cause of death was radiation. At that critical moment, Taxon and her soldiers appear, initiating a shootout. Sumuru's group is forced to flee, triggering a fierce chase. During the chase, another earthquake shakes the ground, causing everyone to trip and fall. Will is partially buried by sand, but is quickly rescued by the adults, who dig him out. Adam quickly checks Will's health with his scanner to ensure the boy is okay. Curious, Will asks about the virus he heard mentioned earlier. Pressed, Sumuru demands explanations, leading Adam to reveal a grim truth. Earth was devastated by a virus, the result of genetic wars, which destroyed humanity's reproductive ability. Without a cure, the virus progressively wiped out all colonies scattered across the galaxy, leaving them as the last survivors. Adam and Jake had hoped that Antaris could be their final chance for survival. The group, persistent in their mission, finds an abandoned building. Unable to open the blocked hatch, Jake shoots it open, allowing everyone to enter. Just as they gain access, Taxon and her warriors arrive. Reluctant to follow, the warriors hesitate until Taxon, in an act of brutality, shoots one of her own soldiers to force the others to obey. Inside the building, the group locates the quantum reactor. Jake works to activate it and perform stability tests with Will's help. Meanwhile, Adam, Sumuru, and a guard continue exploring the area and discover the original settler's ship. Upon entering the ship, Adam manages to activate the console, but realizes they will need the reactor's power to take off. He insists that Sumuru come with them, arguing that there's nothing left to do on the doomed planet. But she resists, feeling her duty is to stay with her people. When Jake finishes the adjustments to the reactor, he calls Adam to share his findings. Analyzing the records reveals that the disaster that killed the male settlers was not divine judgment, but an explosion caused by a structural flaw in the reactor, a truth that deeply shakes Sumuru as she realizes the foundation of her culture is based on a lie. While dealing with this revelation, Will hears something moving in the shadows. With the reactor nearing its limit, Adam checks that all systems are operational, but an urgent alarm sounds, signaling that the reactor is close to exploding. With 82% of the charge already accumulated, Adam instructs Jake to deactivate the reactor and avoid a catastrophe. Before Jake can act, Taxon and her soldiers appear unexpectedly and open fire, causing even more damage to the already unstable reactor. Quickly, Jake takes cover, pulling Will with him, and communicates the imminent danger through the radio. Taxon aims at Jake, ready to shoot, but is interrupted by Sumuru, who challenges her to a direct confrontation. The soldiers follow their leaders, but Adam creates a barrier with precise shots at the surrounding machines, blocking their path. The fight between Sumuru and Taxon intensifies, both demonstrating equivalent hand-to-hand combat skills. Meanwhile, Jake warns that the reactor is minutes away from total explosion. Adam acts quickly, sending Jake and Will to the safety of the ship. He continues covering their retreat, shooting at the warriors trying to advance. The tension from the reactor about to explode fuels Sumuru, who manages to disarm Taxon and hurl her against a power box, electrocuting her. Thinking the fight is over, the group prepares to leave, but Taxon, surprisingly still alive, makes a final attempt to attack, which is swiftly neutralized by Adam. The group runs to the ship and takes off just in time, leaving behind the chaos of a collapsing planet. As they fly back to the city, the inhabitants of Antaris watch them, mixing admiration with despair. Sumuru, visibly emotional, faces the reality of departure, and comforted by a kiss from Adam, prepares for a new beginning. As they realize the earthquakes are worsening rapidly, signaling that the planet's end is closer than Jake had calculated, Adam makes a bold decision. He orders the ship to land, declaring there is enough space to save the entire population. Despite initial hesitation, Sumuru manages to inspire confidence and leads her people into the ship. When everything seems to be calming down, the gigantic sacred serpent emerges furiously from the ground, triggering another violent earthquake. The creature attacks the ship, threatening to compromise the takeoff. Using the cameras to locate the monster, Adam instructs Jake to activate a specific thruster. The jet of flame scares the snake, which tries to flee, but Jake intensifies the fire, neutralizing the threat for good. With the snake defeated and the danger averted, the ship departs from Antaris, leaving behind a doomed planet. On board, everyone settles in for the long journey ahead. Among the passengers, Will has a pleasant surprise. His faithful dog is brought by one of the guards, reinforcing a sense of hope and continuity for the new beginning that awaits them among the stars. If you liked this movie, then I recommend watching this other one here as well. I guarantee you'll enjoy it. See you there.